Wow, Hazel, you sound so American. It was simply an observation. It had no malice or hate behind it. And they're right, I do sound very American. But I'm not American. I grew up here, but I wasn't born here. I think what set me off the most was that I looked just like them. I was born in the same country as them, but I wasn't the same as them. So let's talk about it. I am a third culture kid. It's a term coined by John and Ruth Upstein in the 1950s, defined as individuals that were raised in cultures different from their parents. So, in short, the first culture is your parents' culture. Your second culture is the cultures where the family is currently residing in, and then the third culture is the final product, the combination between those two. This is the mix that the child identifies with the most. With these explanations alone, it's impossible to place myself in one category or another. I could if I wanted to, but that'd be a disservice to myself. I would be denying some part of myself in doing so. It's unavoidable. Even if I could manage to find a definition for myself, it would only work for me. Every third culture kid has their own third culture that they identify with. There's just too many combinations with too many outcomes. I personally think third culture kid is too flimsy of a term to call ourselves, though that's not to the fault of anyone. I'm glad I found any term to classify myself as for that fact, but it feels like duct tape covering a leak too big, even if it's the only way to easily explain ourselves somewhat coherently. We give that answer of, hey, I am a third culture kid, but it opens up the floodgates to so many more questions, and it keeps cascading and cascading. And the next thing you know, you're stuck talking about too many things that you're not sure they'll understand. And it just starts with one simple question. Home has multiple definitions. It can be a place of origin or a familiar place. All of those don't really fit 100%. Where's home becomes a very complicated question for me. Because there's a difference between home, where I stay, and home, where I belong. In my case, I was born in the Philippines, but I left at an extremely young age. I lived in Singapore and the US, and hopped between those two for the rest of my life. So that begs the question, which country do I call home? Which house within those countries do I call home? Is it even fair to call any of those spaces home in the first place? If I define home as my place of origin, then it's a place I don't feel welcome in. Not because it's hostile, rather because I'm not them. I look like them, but I don't sound like them. And I don't even speak my mother tongue. I'm not familiar with the culture as I should be. For all intents and purposes, I'm a tourist in a local's body. I barely lived there. Everything feels vaguely familiar, but also really terribly alien. At least I can order food, go around, talk to shopkeepers, but because of my accent, I get weird looks, or I need to repeat myself. And whenever I'm at family gatherings, I can smile and nod, but I don't know what questions they're asking me, what comments they're saying, what jokes they're laughing about, because I don't speak that language. At the end of the day, I'm just there, a body. If I describe home as a familiar place, then that was a place I'm no longer familiar with. I lived in 2 countries in 4 different time periods of my life. It was Singapore, then to America, then back to Singapore, then back to America again. In a sense, it's kind of like time travel, but it's only one way. Everything sort of looks recognizable. People you know may look entirely different. People may remember you or may not remember you, and you might need to jog their memory. They might not even exist or live there anymore. Who knows where they went? Places you thought exist are now gone, and in its place are new things you probably don't recognize. You end up craving food that isn't sold there, or if they do, it tastes different from how you remember it. Everything changed. I did too, but I'm the one playing catch up. I'm trying to learn years of what happened during my time away, and at the same time I'm trying to find pieces of familiarity that I can grab onto because I have nothing to grab onto. But at least with these two, I'm more of a local in a tourist's body, just terribly behind the times. Change was a constant companion. We were always moving around. The only other companions that I had were the things that we could fit into our luggage, our shipping boxes, and the memories that we made during our stay. Try as we might, we could never bring everything. It was simply impossible. I always had to give up something before I move, always had to say goodbye to a part of myself that I held onto during my stay. Those experiences and memories I had didn't really translate well to wherever I moved because it applied to that specific space. So at the end of the day, I had to start from the ground up. Every time. There was always a degree of separation, no matter where I went. I was always trying to find something recognizable, no matter how small, to latch onto. And once I did, it was a matter of slowly chipping away to make my own space. I made friends. I find my rhythm. Then I learn I'm moving. I pack my things. The process starts once more. Move, latch, grow. I'm settling rather quickly this time around. High five me. Oh, we're moving again. Move, latch, grow. I start to wonder if it's worth trying this time around. I still do it out of habit. There's cardboard boxes at my house once more. My luggage is open. I know this song and dance. It's because of that song and dance that I could never really fit in, or rather, I never had the time to fully fit in. Especially at school. I never had the time to fully acclimate myself, and people knew I wasn't a local because I didn't act like one. I was, for lack of a better term, exotic, and it was a fair observation at the time. I came from outside the country, and I was privy to things that they couldn't experience. So they asked me a lot of questions about the places I lived in. I gave them answers. I told them about what it was like to live overseas and to move often. I told them about the foods I missed, the places I missed. But talking about it more and more made me miss it even more. Though, as I gave answers, I really couldn't talk about my home country. I could never talk about home. In spite of answering all these questions about where I lived and all these wonderful places that I've been to, I felt the pressure to fit in. I felt like I needed to conform and let those experiences just fade away. Yet, at the same time, I didn't want to let go of it. It became a constant tug of war full of questions that I had to ask myself over and over and over again. Do I keep my international identity and have those few degrees of separation? Or do I stick to my local identity so I can have an easier time here and save myself on the stress? Should I even ask these questions if I'm gonna move again? I don't know when I will be. It's a possibility that I might move, and then I'll just have to start over again. I could try and define myself, but that's the neat part. I can't, at least in the traditional sense. I mean, I could, but that'd be a waste of time. I could say that I'm American, but in actuality I'm not because I lived in Southeast Asia, but I'm not really Southeast Asian because I lived in America beforehand, but I'm also Southeast Asian because I lived in Southeast Asia beforehand, but I'm also Pinoy, but not really because I left the country when I was really, really young and I can't speak my mother language, so... You get the point. I'm a melting pot of experiences and cultures. My mannerisms and quirks are a product of those. I find myself in a unique place, one that makes it very hard to latch onto one specific thing, because it feels like it can only reach one specific part of me. My favorite films are a handful of films from various countries. My playlist is a mishmash of genres and languages. The games that I love only resonate with one specific part of me. These are all bits and pieces of media that come together to form the puzzle that is Azel, which makes it all the more liberating when I find something that truly resonates to a complete scale. I haven't found it yet, and maybe I never will, but I can hope, and if I don't, that's fine. There's so much to experience out there. People, places, food. The list continues. The world is an oyster, and I'm blessed to have tasted the tiniest bit of it. And what I've experienced is wholly my own experience. It's nobody else's, because every third culture kid has their own definition of themselves. We will never have the same path, but we can empathize with each other. My home is wherever I find myself the most comfortable. I might not have one singular place, but that's fine. I can't fit myself into one specific umbrella, and that's fine. I might not even have an umbrella because I'm that specific of an individual, and that's fine. I'm me. Azel is Azel. Azel is impossible, and being impossible is fine.